Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Zachariah Renfro, and in today's video we're going to talk about argument reconstruction. We'll talk a little bit about practical reasoning. We'll talk about some general argument tips. And if we have time at the end, we'll go over a practical example or two. Starting off with argument reconstruction, let me go over what argument reconstruction is in case you've forgotten from our last video. Argument reconstruction is taking an argument that you see presented in writing or in video or speech, and then restructuring it in a way so that the logical connections between the premises and conclusion are easily identifiable. So we have 6 steps to good argument reconstruction, and I'm going to go through each one of them now. First step is to diffuse rhetoric. Someone might give you an argument such as, liberals hate Americans, therefore they want to raise taxes. Now, there's a lot of hot rhetoric in that example. So what we would want to do if we were thinking about that argument is we would diffuse the rhetoric. So instead of saying liberals, we might say people who want to increase taxes. And we would completely discard the part about hating Americans, because that's typically not a reason why people want to raise taxes. And we'll chuck all that out because it's extraneous, it's unnecessary. So the argument would become something to the effect of, people who want to raise taxes feel it would be best to raise taxes. And then that would be the new statement. So from that statement, we can make a strong counter argument or a strong counterpoint. But if we start with the first rhetoric charged statement, well, we'll be in trouble because any way we respond is probably going to be emotionally charged. The next thing we want to do is logical streamlining. Someone might present an argument to you in a way where the conclusion is in the middle or where the conclusion is at the beginning. They might say something like, gas power engines hurt the environment. Everyone should drive electric cars because gas engines produce CO2, right? So if we were to restructure that, if we were to logically streamline it, we would say gas engines are bad for the environment, gas engines produce CO2, therefore everyone should drive electric cars. The next thing we have to do is identify our implicit premises. Implicit premises are hidden ideas or hidden premises in an argument. So if someone says, John is a politician, therefore he must be well educated, the implicit premise they have is that politicians are well educated. So we'd want to bring that out when we reconstruct the argument. It would say, the new argument would say something to the effect of, all politicians are well educated, John is a politician, therefore John is well educated. Next thing we need to do is remove irrelevant statements. An irrelevant statement can throw you off when you're either constructing an argument or when you're reconstructing an argument. So for example, let's say the restaurant at the chalet is known to be pretty busy. So someone presents you with an argument saying something to the effect of, it will be hard to get a booking at the chalet because they're always very busy. I once went to the chalet with my boyfriend, and therefore it will be hard to get a booking at the chalet. So the statement about going to the chalet with a boyfriend can be completely cut. We don't need that statement. We can do well enough with saying the first premise, the chalet is often very busy, then the conclusion, it'll be hard to get a booking. The next thing we need to do is remove any ambiguity and vagueness. Ambiguity being an unclear premise, and vagueness being words without precise definition. Let's start with vagueness first. A vague word is words such as big, heavy, small, light, fat, bald. These words don't have precise definitions. You know a bald person when you see them, but how many hairs does someone have to remove from their head before they're classified as being bald, right? You know something heavy when you try to pick it up, but the idea of heaviness will vary from person to person. However, ambiguity or unclear premises can be a little bit trickier, right? Because depending on your background knowledge with the subject, you might find something to be more or less ambiguous. For example, if someone says, those people need to pay more taxes, assuming that you are within the same social circle as the speaker and you know quite well what they're talking about. You might obviously know who exactly what they're talking about. But if you're hearing this as an outside party, you need to remove that ambiguity so that you know exactly who they're saying needs to pay more taxes. And then the last thing we need to do is quantify any generalizations. For example, if someone says, people in the army go to war, that's a bit of a generalization. It's a bit unclear. So we might want to restate it as, most people in the army go to war, or some people in the army go to war. Additionally, they could have a statement that means all. They could say, cows are herbivores, whereas, we need to quantify that. All cows are herbivores. It'd be a scary sight to see a carnivorous cow. Next thing we'll cover is practical reasoning. This is also known as means-in reasoning or utilitarian reasoning. And the idea is that the proper course of action is the action that is the one that produces the most value or the most good. And the value or good placed on any given outcome is for you as the decider to come about with. So you make value predictions and then you try and organize them in a logical way. So I've got an example here, going to a party. Now, if you go to the party and don't see your ex, you're going to have a good time. But if you go to the party and you run into your ex, you're going to have a bad time. So let's go through this specifically. If you go to the party and you see your ex, we'll say that's minus 10 happiness. But if you go to the party and you don't see your ex, we'll say that's plus 5 happiness. However, if you stay at home, you get neither any unhappiness or any happiness. It's just neutral, right? So in determining the proper course of action, you have to add these together and see which outcome you would prefer. Ideally, practical reason is superseded by moral rules. So for example, suppose a doctor's decided that you have a rare enzyme in your brain that could cure 10 people who are dying from a disease. Taking the enzyme out would kill you, but the doctor decides he's going to do it anyways because it would produce the best good overall, right? That seems a bit of a ridiculous proposition. So ideally, a moral rule, such as, it's not good to murder people, would stop the physician from taking you out and taking the brain enzyme, right? This is a very standard problem that utilitarian reasoning has as a whole, and as you get into more advanced ethics classes, you'll see this throughout. Now for some argument tips. Some arguments have explanations for conclusions. For example, you might have a plant that it's dying. So you reason either the plant has got enough water or it's not got enough fertilizer. You've been given the plant enough water, so therefore it's not got enough fertilizer. Right? The explanation is that the plant's not got enough fertilizer, but it's also the conclusion. Additionally, causation is often confused with correlation. So for example, big cities tend to have high amounts of pollution. So someone could say, big cities cause pollution, right? But big cities also have a lot of other things, such as people who ride bicycles. So if someone saw the pollution data and the number of bicycles, someone might go, oh, bicycles in large numbers cause pollution. They're confusing correlation, i.e. large numbers of bicycles in a big city, with causation, which is causing pollution, right? We know bicycles don't cause pollution. It's just something that's correlated with living in a big city. And then finally, abduction is a method of argument similar to induction, which is explanation by the best guess. So for example, if it's dark, you might assume that it's nighttime, right? That your best guess is that it's nighttime. You're just using logical principles to go through and determine what you think the best guess is. I hope this video on argument reconstruction has helped you. I know it's a bit short, and I know the video is a bit fast, but The goal of this video is to help give you some of the basic ideas so that you can practice these concepts on your own. My advice to you is to take what you've learned here and then practice reading some arguments and just making some basic argument trees or streamlining some basic arguments from what you read. That'll help you immensely, and it'll really help cement this as knowledge going forward. Thank you so much. You have a wonderful day.